Alright, Spider-Man is one of the most popular characters in any piece of media ever, so it makes perfect sense why he's got so many movies, and I'm going to talk about all of them, ranking them from worst to best, because they've certainly had their ups, and they've certainly had their downs over the years, and so let's get on the ranking. The Amazing Spider-Man 2 is one of the worst movies I've ever seen in my whole life, and it used to be the worst movie I'd ever seen in my whole life. Anyway, Spider-Man shows up, and then you just remember what movie you're watching. And anyway, Rhino is in a truck, and Spider-Man is an easy opportunity to stop him, but then he just lets him hurt more people. But we have plenty of stupid plots, like somebody trying to get Spider-Man's blood to cure the disease, and then some fanboy thinking that they're friends in real life, but then falls into a pit of eels, and then a bunch of nothing happens, and then we see Electro, and holy shit, the design. You thought that Steppenwolf from Justice League, that great movie, looked bad. No, this looks far worse. And we also have this awful fucking scene in Times Square. Now, first of all, the product placement. Holy shit. Now, the product placement in a movie. Okay, I get it. It's Times Square. It's a real location with big-ass billboards and product placement everywhere. But why is there so much focus on it? Plus, Times Square is a large location, and that is a cool place for a superhero movie action sequence, but nothing is creatively integrated within the specific sequence. And now let's look at two other Times Square related scenes from other Marvel superhero movies. If we look at the one from Captain America: The First Avenger, which really isn't an action sequence, but this is how to choreograph this correctly. But anyway, that is a really cool sequence. This was the first MCU movie I ever saw, and I fucking shit my pants when that scene. I saw it in the theater. That is actually a really cool scene. I just love how it cuts to black, but that's not important. This is actually how to properly choreograph that. Yeah, I know there's not any fighting going on, but this is how you should do that. Then look at this other scene from Into the SpiderVerse, which, yes, isn't live action, but you could easily do this if it's in a fictional format. We have all these other creative things surrounding it. There's plenty of references and such in just other fictional media. And yes, I know Into the SpiderVerse did use some product placement here and there, but it was just cool to see how that would look in this universe because the art style was so investing, which this movie certainly doesn't. Which this movie certainly doesn't have a very good look. I hate how everything's like Batman. Why is everything a bad nighttime fight scene and shit? Like, what the fuck? Also, in every other Marvel film, when something bad is gonna happen, people usually just evacuate the location, but no. So anyway, there's some sick dude becomes Green Goblin, and then we get a fight between Gwen Stacy, who fucking dies, and then Peter Parker decides that he's not gonna be Spider-Man anymore, but then he finds a USB with Gwen Stacy's speech, and then he's Spider-Man again, and then in the movie, just fucking ends in the middle of a fight scene. This scene was in the trailer, which some people might have saw the trailer and saw the scene which it contained and were potentially engaged by it. So when you show up to a movie theater, you're expecting to see that scene that was in the... I'm not saying the MCU doesn't do that. The MCU is king of that, especially with the Avengers movies. But I'm guaranteed there were some people that were disappointed that we never actually got to see this fight. They're not even setting up a fight. It just ends in the middle of a fight. It's not like Incredibles 1 sets up a fight, which doesn't start until the beginning of 2, which is terrible. I've also reviewed it, but why would you do that in this movie? This movie is so fucking bad. Avoid it like the plague. The Amazing Spider-Man is amazingly shitty, because it's another fucking lazy cash, and that came out 5 years after the original trilogy ended. But yeah, really necessary, Sony. This movie tries to do many things on a new take, being a Spider-Man movie, but it's not a good movie at all. I fucking hate this movie. But anyway, my main problems is that it's really fucking boring. It makes changes to the character. Now, I don't give a shit about comic accuracy in the MCU. The more recent Thor related products, they made him more of a serious goofball in Ragnarok and Infinity War and not Endgame, because I don't think his character worked in Endgame at all. Anyway, but basically their character just kind of defeats the purpose. And what makes Spider-Man an interesting character besides the design? Well, let's look at Stan Lee's explanation.
Well, people hate spiders, so you can't call a hero Spider-Man. You want him to be a teenager? Teenagers can only be sidekicks. and you want him to have personal problems, Stan, don't you know what a superhero is? They don't have personal problems.
Also, popular opinion alert, this Spider-Man does not carry anything with that, and Andrew Garfield is fucking terrible in this role. He's worse than Tobey Maguire, which was already pretty bad, but then... Anyway, he's just some guy with an emo haircut, like, he's not even an outcast, he's... Like, why are Peter Parker's parents so heavily featured in the narrative? And also, this movie's editing is just terrible. What did you even say? Now I see what they're trying to do here. Andrew Garfield is like realizing that he's like his spider abilities, he doesn't know how to use them yet. So he's trying to manage them in a situation which he's forcibly doing it. But if you look at this scene from Into the Spider-Verse, which also coincides with the character accidentally putting themselves in a state of danger because of their powers, look at how it's choreographed. It's actually a creative setup, not just some bullshit shenanigans on a subway. Also, the Uncle Ben death scene in this movie is just atrocious and stupid. Okay, so the thief drops his gun and then he tries to take it from him, but then he gets shot, and then you're trying to get killed. Why would you do that? Why would you do that? That's stupid. All you need to do is, I don't know, maybe not try to pick up the gun. But then Spider-Man's motivation has always been, with great power comes great responsibility. But nope, his motivation is hey, some ass rammer shot my uncle, now I'm gonna go around and fucking kill him. Nobody thinks that when they hear Spider-Man at all. He just goes around and beats people up on the street and shit for no goddamn reason. Also, I just gotta say, the Spider-Man suit in this movie just looks terrible. What the fuck? He's not even a hero until halfway until the movie's over, but oh my god, just movie feels like it never really began or ended. And I'll give it credit, it's not the holy grail of bad superhero movies, but it's not as bad as The Amazing Spider-Man 2, but it's nowhere near as good as their top entry, let me tell you that. Alright, Spider-Man 3, now everybody knows this movie sucks, and the biggest problem is that there's way too much shit going on now. I've kind of seen it like Iron Man 2, which is not a good movie at all. It's one of the worst MCU movies, but it's a better movie than this. Basically, they just kind of saw it as, hey, the more villains there are, the better the movie is, yeah. It's things like the Sandman backstory, and that's kind of cool, I guess, but there's just so much focus on unnecessary villains. Okay, if this just focused on one of the villains, this would have been better, but no. But if you look at Into the Spider-Verse, yes, there are plenty of recognizable villains, but the Kingpin is the only main one to focus. There are other ones that could be full-on antagonist, but the Kingpin is the only one of focus. And then they're just using recognizable characters instead of just random-ass goons they could just beat up. And top with the continuation of the terrible performances in these movies, it's just such a bad conclusion to something I already hate. And I was never a fan of this one, but I'm glad the trilogy's over. Oh wait, Spider-Man 4? What the fuck? Now, I've talked about why I've hate Sony time and time again. This is the ultimate cash-in. It's gonna be so bad. It's just how many bad 10-year sequels are there besides Toy Story 3, which isn't terrible. Toy Story 3 is good. I don't love it, but it's good. But anyway, how many of there are the 10+ year sequels that are actually good? I don't think very many of them. What about Dumb and Dumber 2? Oh, that's fucking terrible. Anchorman 2. A lot of the Pixar movies. Bill and Ted 3, which isn't even out yet, but I'm pretty sure it's just gonna make money because Keanu Reeves is in it.
You're breathtaking!
Ghostbusters 3.
Oh, they got the Ghostbusters license. Oh, look, they're making another Ghostbusters movie because they could get a license, although absolutely nobody demanded that, and they did absolutely nothing right with it.
One more thing. Ghostbusters 3. Is it really going to happen? Should it happen? Well, if they made the Santa Claus 3, Free Willy 3, Home Alone 3, Psycho 3, The Never-Ending Story 3, Problem Child 3, and about 10,000 Scary Movie and American Pie sequels, all the crap that gets shat out of Hollywood's big fat fucking ass, I don't see why Ghostbusters 3 shouldn't get made. I grew up with those movies. I would love to see those guys put on the proton packs one more time, even if the whole movie's just the Ghostbusters sitting around taking a shit.
Which isn't even out yet, but it's gonna be a fucking disaster, like the Ghostbusters Feminist Edition. Sony, why are you making this? Oh yeah, money. Alright, Spider-Man 2. Now, the main issue with Spider-Man 2 is that the plot, again, is just a fucking mess. It just revolves around Peter Parker being shat on like every goddamn character, and he's just a dick to them. Then, the main antagonist, Dr. Octopus, she's not a good villain. He's just a dumbass. Not even a funny dumbass. There's just so many dumb plot-up elements, like the Mary Jane plot has just been thrown in there to continue Peter getting shat on, and then, by the end, they eventually get back together, which they immediately throw the plot out the window in the even worse sequel, Spider-Man 3. Alright, if you haven't figured this out already, unpopular opinion, all of the Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies suck. Now, I've pointed this out before, but I've never liked any of these movies. And
yes, I said that. The original 3, well, at least the original 2, I don't think anyone really likes the terrible third one, and The Amazing Spider-Man are not good movies.
I've heard people say things that are similar to my points on why I don't like the first Avengers. It was good when it came out. I remember seeing it in a shithole theater and being completely blown away. But just because something was good when it came out, that don't mean it's good, because as a young child, after I got into the MCU, after I saw Captain America, the first Avenger, the Avengers came out, indicating that this was everything that built up for something that would finally come out. And everyone was there except Spider-Man, so anyway, that kind of left me a solution. Now, Spider-Man is probably my favorite Marvel character. It always has been. He's just, the appeal is just so massive. That's why he's got so many movies, because he's just such a popular character. I always told that they were like the best superhero movies ever, which I completely disagree. Now, I've never liked any of these movies. They just didn't appeal to me as a kid, and now that I'm older, I can actually see why I didn't like them and critically analyzing them. And the biggest problem with this whole trilogy is that Tobey Maguire sucks, and my point is present that one. They make him like a real wimp throughout the entirety of the movie. That's why he's just supposed to be developed as a character, but you don't feel for him throughout the entirety of most of the film. And the scenes where he is Spider-Man is the character, they just don't click with me, and most of the acting is not good either. Like, half the characters are like 30-year-olds at a high school students. Like, yes, I know Tom Holland is in his 20s, but he doesn't look that his age. That's why it's such a convincing performance. Let's look at one of the best comedy movies ever made, Superbad. Now, if it didn't star people that weren't the same age as the characters were intending to be, then the movie just wouldn't be funny. Given the situations that are it's just funny, defeating the purpose. And half the plot structure makes no sense anyway. Basically, you see Peter do something, and then Norman does something, and then they meet up. And then it's this and this and this over again until the movie's over. Spider-Man Far From Home is pretty good. Now, I think it's the perfect post-Endgame movie that specifically works. It's lower in scale, and that's what we need. Like, I just love how it makes fun of the snap and how stupid of a scientific context it is, and then it's probably also the funniest MCU movie to date. Now, the story isn't very compelling, but there are compelling parts. Mysterio is a great character for this movie. Now, yes, the twist of him being a villain is obvious, because in every other Spider-Man piece of media ever, he is a villain. But his motivation makes perfect sense, and it is perfectly executed. And the action, which wasn't bad in Homecoming, I just wanted something more from it, it's pretty good. It's not like the best MCU action ever, but I think it's the one thing that it specifically improves upon and becomes Spider-Man Homecoming. Now, the MCU Spider-Man is a really distinct take on the franchise, and it works as a comedy and not just the average MCU movie. The MCU has had its ups and downs, the good and bad movies and all, but this one specifically distinguishes itself from all, even the other comedy ones, say as Guardians of the Galaxy or Thor Ragnarok. It specifically differentiates each other from, which I really like. And it's a good example of how just Tom Holland is just so good in this role. And they make Spider-Man a complete goofball that does things that may negatively impact other people's lives. It's kind of like in The Amazing Spider-Man when Andrew Garfield is just like, he's just like going around beating people up for no goddamn reason. Like, this is how to do it correctly. Yes, he's screwing up other people's lives, but, you know, he's doing it out of unintentional experience. And I really like how they just did the character. And just other things, like, I love how Tony Stark, who's still probably my favorite MCU character to this day, is just more than a punchline, and it's just featured in so many other elements, and then other things from present in other Spider-Man movies, like Flash Thompson, who, yeah, he's an asshole, but he's a realistic asshole. He's just more popular than, even if we have constant reminders that it is in fact part of a larger cinematic universe. My only real complaint is that the action, it's not bad, it's just I've seen much more creative out of the MCU, and it just works as better as a comedy movie, and it just works as a Spider-Man movie. And I was expecting Far From Home to be better, and it did approve one of these things, but I think it's still the best MCU Spider-Man movie to date. Alright, number 1, we gotta go with Into the Spider-Verse. Now, I honestly thought this movie was gonna suck.
They're making an animated Spider-Man.
Like, okay, it's a Sony Pictures animation movie. How many bad movies have they made? Oh yeah, all of them besides this. And also, there's other things, like, oh, okay, well, the trailers were just kind of like unfinished test animation. That's kind of what they looked like. Nothing was really that cool showcased within them. And I thought there's going to be way too many villains because it does feature more than Spider-Man 3, but thankfully there's a properly divided focus within all of them, and there's much to appreciate for both non-comic and comic readers. It's the best. It's not even a year old, and in this time recording, every time that I've watched it, I've just appreciated it more and more. Now, I never considered it a bad movie. It's just something you gotta watch more than once. And it's good. It's your average Phil Lord and Chris Miller movie, which takes a terrible idea and makes it good, except Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs 1. Don't even get me started on that pile of shit. But this movie works in plenty of creative takes on something that simple and fills it with so much to appreciate from both casual and hardcore fans, because it's something that everything is done in some well aspect, because the story's not perfect, but there's so much style put in everything, including the dialogue, the original score, the animation, which is so damn good. Like, I have not been this wowed since animation since the Lego Movie 1, which I know that was only a few years ago and made by the same people, but I'm sure for the people that were around when Toy Story 1 came out and that blew their mind, I'm sure this is much more of a drastic time jump. And plus, it perfectly captures the tone of a comic book, and every character is just so distinct as well, because the voice acting is just full of great performances. Now, this movie easily could have sucked. There's way too many villains, which I thought was going to happen. You got the fucking guy, the loud black kid from Incredible Crew, you know, that great show.
Oh! Soda Ray!
But this movie is almost flawless. Now, I do wish it was a little bit longer, you know, develop some of the other characters that didn't really get that much to do in this movie, which I'm assuming they're going to do more with the other characters in the many sequels to come, I'm sure. But plus the characters, just all of them, are somewhat intriguing. And plus the original soundtrack is great. Now, some people have a problem with the pop music in the movie. Now, I thought it was good. Sure, the songs are not something I would independently listen to in reality, but I like how they're actually used within the context of the film. Yeah, it's another Spider-Man origin story, but it works so damn well, and it's just something you gotta check out. Even if you don't like superhero movies, I cannot recommend this enough. Definitely go check it out. Alright, Spider-Man movies have had their ups and downs over the year, and I'm glad to see they're improving with the 3 most recent installments. Anyway, I'm Dr. Henry, and I'm signing off.